Welcome to the meeting of the Minnehaha County Commission. It's a gorgeous morning, and we're glad all of you could be with us. We'll start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just a reminder to go ahead and silence your cell phone. It's always a good reminder to me to double check. Meeting documents are available for review today down on the end next to Commissioner Heiberger. And Carol is here if you need a listening device. So that takes us to routine business. I'd consider a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item is to approve commission meeting minutes from August 20th, 2019.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next item is bills to be paid in the amount of $2,647,873.33.
Pay the bills.
Second.
Comment.
Motion and a second with multiple comments. We'll start with Commissioner Heiberger.
I just wanted to ask the auditor's office about the fire premium distribution. That wasn't something that I had remembered seeing before, so if you could just explain that to us.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. Kim Adamson from the Auditor's Office. Included in today's list of bills is a distribution of fire insurance premium to all of the authorized fire departments in our county. This premium represents a tax that's levied on fire insurance coverage throughout the state. It's a 1.5% tax applied to all fire insurance premiums. And we receive this distribution from the state, and then it is apportioned out to all of the approved fire departments within our county. Those departments are certified by the Department of Public Safety annually, and there's some criteria they have to meet. Then we distribute these premiums based on a two-part formula. It includes the value of all properties in those fire areas and their population. So it was based on the 2010 census data.
Commissioner Heiberger?
Follow-up comment. I think it's interesting that the auditors and the treasurer's office do other things that are not related just to what you would think county government is. They also take money from the state and redistribute it back to the taxpayers. So I just found that very interesting, that I think our office does a whole lot more than people are aware of, more than I was aware of.
Parsky.
Additional comment, fire insurance, that's people's homeowners insurance, so that's, everybody's paying into that, and it's
Correct.
being redistributed. It's a tax on your insurance premium, so people understand that.
Commissioner Barth?
It's good to have Kim and Bob here from the auditor's office, but today we also had a distribution of $1.354 million on the jail project and $189,000 on 911 that we transferred. So when you take all those things out, our bills for today were more like $400,000.
Any other comments, questions about the bills? Thank you, Kim. If not, I had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Hey,
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item are reports, and there are none. Next item are personnel actions. I'd consider a motion to approve the routine personnel actions.
so moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item are abatements. There are none. Item 7, notices and requests. There are none. Item 8, planning and zoning notices. There are none. Item 9, petition for compromise of lien. There are none. That takes us directly to public comment. Is there anyone here today who'd like to speak about something that's not on our agenda? Good morning. Name and address, please, sir.
Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Bob Colby. We saw something in the paper here just the other day, and I thought I would give you a piece of history that relates to that incident when the pilot Al Haynes passed away, and it was commented in the newspaper. Excuse me. And the crash in Sioux City, Sioux Falls had an integral part in that sort of thing, though we never had to actually come forward. When the steering apparatus broke on the airplane, there were two airports that were in line for the landing. Sioux City, Sioux Falls. If it could do a right turn, I believe it was Sioux City. If it could only do left turns, it would have been Sioux Falls. And they had all the apparatus ready to go, emergency people, etc. And when they found out how they could steer it, then all of the Sioux Falls people headed to Sioux City. Had it been the other way around, Sioux Falls would have been the site of that particular crash. It's just one of those things that we tend to forget as time passes, but it was a major event. I was a newbie at that time and had no idea what this all involved. And I don't know if there's anybody here that was around at that time and aware of that particular circumstance. Just an FYI.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here today who'd like to speak about something that's not on our agenda? All right, if not, we will move into our regular business. And first, I'd entertain a motion to recess the Minnehaha County Commission meeting.
Motion. Second.
And a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next, I'd consider a motion to move into a joint meeting with the City of Hartford.
Motion to joint meeting.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. I'd recognize there's a quorum on the Minnehaha County side. Hartford, do you have a quorum? Yes, we do. Okay, so quorum for Hartford. So that takes us to the item, which is a public hearing to consider the proposed joint zoning jurisdictional area beyond the municipal corporate limits of the city of Hartford. Scott Anderson, good morning.
Good morning. Yes, Scott Anderson, Planning Director for the county. And today is a public hearing that's been advertised. And it is with the City of Hartford and the County Commission to consider potential possible joint zoning control in an area that's been defined in the public hearing notice surrounding Hartford. And for everyone in the audience and at home, that joint jurisdictional area or proposed joint jurisdictional area is shown on the map. I will be glad to introduce Teresa Seidel. She's the city manager for Hartford, and she will be explaining the city's request. This request is coming forth from the city of Hartford. And just a reminder to everyone at home and in the audience and the commissions, we, as a county, we have a joint jurisdiction with the city of Sioux Falls, a joint zoning jurisdiction with the city of Sioux Falls, and we also have a joint zoning jurisdiction with the city of Del Rapids. Those are all implemented in the 1980s, or early 80s and mid 80s respectively. So I'd be glad to answer any questions. Otherwise, and I'll be here for other questions throughout the hearing. Otherwise, we can turn this over to Teresa Seidel, and she can introduce the request and answer any questions you may have as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. How are you?
Good.
Good. I'm Teresa Seidel. As you pointed out, I'm the City Administrator with the City of Hartford. We are before you requesting joint jurisdiction with the county. The city has been actually talking about joint jurisdiction for quite a few years now, at least since 2012. We've been discussing it with our planning board, with our city council. We've involved CCOG in the process just to find out a little bit more about it. We've looked at the advantages and disadvantages of joint jurisdiction and how the process actually works. You know, the advantages we've looked at definitely encourages responsible growth. And, you know, a city that is close proximity to Sioux Falls, we are experiencing growth, you know. We want to promote cooperative land use and decision-making with that growth. We want to minimize any potential rural or urban conflict as we grow. We want to make sure we make it easier to annex land, you know, that fringes upon the city, and we want to make sure that when we do that annexation, we can service that land. So we want to just simplify it for the city, for the landowners. We want to, like I said, make sure we have orderly growth within that. It allows the the city, the county, the landowners, all to work together to, like I said, ensure we have orderly growth that will be beneficial to everybody in the long run. We do realize, with, joint jurisdiction, it does add another layer of government. It kind of slows down the process too. If somebody wants to do something within this joint jurisdiction, they'll have to go through a joint board versus just, dealing with the county. So we realize, that's another layer of government they gotta go through. It kind of slows down the process. But we think in the long run, the long term, joint jurisdiction is, the advantages, definitely outweigh the disadvantages of it. So, after we've had these meetings, we've decided to ask to move forward with joint jurisdiction. Like I pointed out before, we are a growing city. Hartford basically has one of the highest growth rates per capita in the county. So we have over the last, just within the last 6 years, we have actually annexed in 2 new developments, which have over 162 acres in them. We have 7 active housing developments right now within the city alone. So we have, a lot of development going on, people moving to town, our population is growing. So we just want to make sure that our identified growth area in our comprehensive plan, is one that, we can service if annexation is wanted by those properties. So as you can see on the map, that what we're looking at is, this area that we are proposing. It follows in our comprehensive plan, our major street plan. It's our growth area. This is also the current plating jurisdiction that we have with the county. So we do have plating jurisdiction already established with the county. It follows the very same boundaries. We're not changing anything. We want to keep the boundaries consistent and follow the same plan. We definitely are only proposing, as you can see, some areas we go, anywhere from a half mile out to 1.5 miles. We are not coming anywhere close to or exceeding that 6 miles that, we could be allowed to by law to go out. We see this as a very reasonable area, area that we can service if need be. We don't want to overreach our boundaries. We want to be reasonable in this. So this is identified as a reasonable area which we can handle the growth area there, that we can service the growth area there. And so, if you would allow us to move forward with joint jurisdiction, if we would move past this step here, what we would do going forward is definitely our city planning board would work on drafting the regulations for this area. We anticipate we would like to follow, we have kind of reviewed a little bit Del Rapids regulations for their joint jurisdiction. We would like to use that template as much as we can. We don't want to, deviate too far or bring you a whole new set of rules. We want to make sure there's some consistency. We don't want you to have to worry about what are the rules are for Sioux Falls, what are the rules for Dells, Hartford. So we're going to try to keep that as consistent as possible. So we would develop those regulations. Once we have a proposed draft of that, our plan is to invite all the property owners within that area to a public meeting, individually invite them, get their input, we want to be able to explain the regulations that we are proposing, like I said, get their input, see if there is something that, we need to address, we need to change, work with those landowners in that area. And then, once that process is over with, then we would definitely present it to county staff for their review and input, and then hopefully move forward with finalizing it, as we go. So our request today here is basically for at this step for you guys to hopefully approve our comprehensive plan and allow us to move forward with the joint jurisdiction process. Any questions?
Any questions?
Do you have the projected growth areas for Hartford for the next 10, 20 years?
They are in our comprehensive plan, and I sent that to the county. Do you,
Okay.
is that
I
with you?
missed that, I'm sorry.
No, I can certainly pull that out here. Let me find it here. Okay, so we did kind of a projection of what a low growth would be, a medium growth would be, and a high growth rate would be. Right now, we're kind of on set for that medium growth. So for 2020, so next year coming up, our low growth rate is right at 3,000. 3,089 is what it shows in our comp plan. We are actually over that right now. So we're a year ahead and we're right at about 3,100. So we're exceeding that. 2025, we expect 34,000, 2030, 3,765, and 2035, a little over 4,000.
But do you have a map that shows the projected growth areas around the town, where you're gonna grow?
Don't have it divided up in maps. I mean, we do graph our projected growth areas, but not as far as sections,
Okay.
areas. You
Okay.
know, our developments that we have, we're seeing a lot of people move into, we have quite a few on the south part of town. We have 4 active developments on the south part of town, so we do have a lot of open lots there. We see a lot of people moving in, building homes there and growing south. We do, though, have one new development that's coming online on the north part of town that, we will hopefully see some more growth there as well.
Commissioner Heiberger.
I'm wondering how many public meetings you've had to involve the people that you want to have joint jurisdiction with.
At this point, we haven't had any public meetings where we have, invited them directly. Of course, we have the public meeting, with our planning commission that it's open to everybody, but we haven't directly invited anybody within this area until we get permission to move on. We don't really have any regulations to show them at this point, so, I would rather, have something to show them and to talk about, be able to answer their questions, and at this point, we don't have that, so we wanted to wait until we get some regulations drafted, to move on before we hold those meetings.
Commissioner Heiberger.
My concern is that if I just penciled it out on my map book.
Sure.
If they don't even know you're doing this and then we approve it, then it's already a done deal. And they've had no input ahead of time on whether they're a part of that comprehensive plan or not. I mean, you're just making decisions for them that they haven't been a part of.
Well, to my understanding, this step is not a done deal, that we still have to develop regulations, and those have to be approved by both our a joint planning board and our joint county board, if that's correct. I guess that's what I've been told by our attorney. And unless you approve those, then it's go forward.
Commissioner Heiberger.
I guess, I've read your comprehensive plan. What you're asking me to do is approve the comprehensive plan, and a part of that comprehensive plan sets a joint jurisdiction, even if there aren't any rules and regulations to guide that at this point. You've just put all those people in a joint jurisdiction without any input from them ahead of time. That's my biggest concern.
Okay.
Not like an informational, we want a joint jurisdiction with people that don't know that I'm doing this.
Like I said, I guess to my understanding, this wasn't the last step. This was one of the probably second step in going forward, that once we develop the regulations, we still need to have approval from our joint planning board and approval from the joint commissions too, to actually.
I would agree with that, but this is still a binding step
Okay.
to me.
Other questions? Commissioner Barth.
Teresa, it's great to see you guys here. What are the official newspapers for Hartford? Is it the Minnehaha Messenger and the Argus Leader, or do you?
It's just the Minnehaha Messenger for us.
Okay.
Now, for these joint meetings, I have sent notices to your official newspapers as well. So it's the Argus Leader, the Garrettson Gazette, and the one in Brandon too.
So if we were to enact this, then in the future, when there's issues in the Brower subdivision, would you call yourself? I'm just asking, just kidding.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's always been a bit of a sore spot for me, the Brower subdivision. And, I would love to see the city annex that area and bring city services there and make that into the economic development jewel that it should be. As I look at this map, it looks like you're planning more to the northeast than to the south. Is that where you think growth will be?
Well, that's what we've identified so far. It is easier to serve to the north and to the west, actually. The northwest is actually the easiest to serve, and then it's the northeast. So, hopefully we see growth that area because it's easier to service that area, with sewer flow and whatnot. But, and with the east, obviously, we're going to go towards Sioux Falls, so.
Any other questions? Commissioner Benega.
Teresa, I just have a couple of questions. Do you think it's a little confusing when the annexation is a half a mile on one side of the community and a mile and a half on another side? I don't know that that's usual in the other annexations that or joint jurisdictions that we've done together for other communities. And the other thing, are the annexations pretty much driven by the landowner or by the city?
I definitely say the landowner drives that, We have never done a forced annexation on anybody, It's always been the request from a landowner. It's usually because they'll want to develop their property, so, it's always been landowner driven, They've always signed a petition and requested that, we've, like I said, since I've been with city, and not to my knowledge, we've never done a forced annexation.
And the reason I ask that is my gut feeling is, and I agree with Commissioner Heiberger, that if the landowners are involved in this conversation up front, they may have a different opinion, frankly, than the city would have. And I think they need to be involved in that conversation in reference to the steps, and if there are additional ones. To be honest, I'm not legally sure about that, but if we take this step, I think we're making a commitment to what we've already got printed, so to speak. So that would be my one concern that we have. And I understand Hartford's issues with having control and annexations and joint jurisdictions, because those can be expensive from infrastructure kinds of things, but we want to be supportive as much as we can. But I think it needs to be a uniform discussion with the community and the landowners, and making sure everybody's on the same page.
Oh, I definitely agree, and like I said, I didn't see this as being the last step. I saw this as being a first step, and then, like I said, we definitely, I've talked with our planning and zoning board. We definitely want to invite, if it's one meeting, two meetings, whatever, the adjoining landowners and get their input. I mean, we don't want to make anything difficult for, we want to work with the landowners,
I'm not worried about that.
Yeah.
And I'm glad Scott's coming up, because I'd like some clarification about the Dale Rapids. I know the city of Sioux Falls and the county is a 3 mile, pretty much, generally speaking. What about Dale Rapids?
Well, I guess I'll start out by saying they all fluctuate. Even the city of Sioux Falls, it can go out as much as 2 miles and as narrow as half a mile or less. Dale Rapids is also very similar. It's basically, I would say, generally a half a mile around the city of Dale Rapids, except where it goes out towards the interstate and the interstate interchange.
Okay.
That's also included, and that's about 2 miles. So it does fluctuate. And I just wanted to also sort of address Cindy's, or Commissioner Heiberger's question. It's sort of a yes and a no. By adopting this resolution today, I think we are indicating we are moving ahead with a joint jurisdiction. As Teresa indicated, it's not the final step. I mean, the final step is we adopt an official zoning ordinance. That zoning ordinance becomes effective. There's an effective date, and on that effective date, voila, you have joint jurisdiction, and we start the process. There's a process for the adoption of that zoning ordinance, that new zoning ordinance, and I suppose, it's a legal question. If we never adopted that zoning ordinance, then I suppose the process is not completed, and you wouldn't have joint jurisdiction, but you would have agreed to it. So you're sort of in legal limbo, but I would agree, or it's, my observation, thought that approving this resolution today indicates that we are moving ahead with joint jurisdiction, and there would be further steps down the road. That further step would be, at a minimum, the adoption of a joint zoning ordinance. and how we get to that joint zoning ordinance, I think the city of Hartford has sort of laid out. There would be the preparation of it, the writing, public hearings. I think it's a little bit more involved than what Teresa's indicated, because I think we need to involve the city or the county and the city planning jurisdictions. I certainly would want to be involved in the public hearings and the public participation of that, because ultimately it's those citizens that would be coming to my office. The way that all of our joint jurisdiction controlled or our joint zoning ordinances are written is, while it's a joint jurisdiction, I am the administrator of that joint zoning ordinance, and that's the way they're all written. The county planning director is the administrator of that joint zoning control. Yes, we work with the municipalities, but ultimately they come to my office, and that's the way the ordinances are written. Not to say that they couldn't alter that. I mean, we can change how those ordinances are written, but the county administers the joint zoning ordinances. So I hope that, maybe that doesn't clarify anything.
Commissioner Heiberger.
I think that clarifies it. I still have the same concern that there's no rural residents, or maybe there's some, but there's minimal rural residents that know that they're even a part of this today. And as an elected official, it's important for me to make sure everyone knows. And I think at several community meetings and making sure everyone had gotten a letter that this was even an opportunity to come and speak publicly is very important, because their voices should be heard. Because once it's a joint jurisdiction, now they have to not only deal with us, but they're going to deal with you. And they can't vote for you. They can only vote for us. So,
Commissioner Karski.
Scott, I have a question for you again, if you don't mind. Talk a little bit about the process before the Planning Commission, how many meetings, how much you guys looked at this, vetted it. What was the vote on the Planning Commission to move this to us?
Well, the vote was unanimous.
Okay.
I mean, the vote was, looking at their comprehensive plan and adopting it. I think that I know that the Planning Commission really felt that the ultimate decision is going to be the County Commission's decision on whether to move forward with this, and that is the approach that they took at that time.
So how much did they look? I mean, was this a 15-minute presentation, sent it on to the county, or was
Yes.
this? Okay, thank you.
Before you leave, one thing, because I did reach out to Scott and ask for the minutes of that meeting, and it appears from the minutes that nobody came to speak either in favor or against this. Is that correct?
That's correct, and the hearing was also advertised in all of the papers. As Teresa indicated, I requested that we advertise in all the official newspapers, not just the Hartford paper. But that's not unusual for public hearings either. I mean, that's, part of the downfall of public hearings, and that's why, as I indicated in my memo, I think we really need to go beyond that and have, when we adopt that zoning ordinance, if we decide to move forward, we need to have the active participation of all the property owners out there. And you may recall that when we were, we've done this several times before. When we were re-adopting our drainage ordinance, we had, and Jeff was highly involved at that time with that. We had several meetings at different locations, Del Rapids and Brandon, and some of those we had 200 or more people show up. And I know, and when we were revising and adopting our new comprehensive plan, we had several public hearings, and we had them at West Central, we had them at Tri-Valley, at the school districts, and many of them we had 100 or more people show up, like at Tri-Valley. I know Cindy Heiberger was at that one. Mm-hmm. So we had a really good participation on what people wanted to see in their comprehensive plan, and then we move forward with that. And I really was very pleased with how those processes were carried on, and I really would like to duplicate them with this, because it's very important that we actively seek everyone's participation, and my concern is public hearing notices just don't really do that all that well. And in this kind of a situation, it's difficult to post a hearing notice on a piece of property I mean, we can do flyers, and we did that with the adoption of our comprehensive plan. We posted flyers at community stores, gas stations, making people aware, so.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Barth.
The Planning Commission, while it may have expeditiously pushed this through, we've discussed joint jurisdiction over and over and over because obviously sometimes and actually fairly often, one of the other bodies fails to show up with a quorum, and so things get delayed. And you know, we also know that it will be more work for us going forward, where we may have joint Minnehaha, Hartford, joint Del Rapids, Minnehaha, joint Sioux Falls, Minnehaha, Board of Adjustment, then Minnehaha. And we eventually, who knows, we'll have Crooks and Colton and Humboldt, hopefully not Sherman. But anyway, the fact is that we're going through meeting after meeting after meeting, and it's not like my fellows on that body are heavily compensated. I have a job, and I love my job, but the other members of the Planning Commission get a pittance for their efforts.
Okay, so I think we've given the proponents an opportunity to speak. Is there anyone here today who would like to speak in opposition to this? Good morning. Could you just identify yourself and give your address, please?
Mike Grace, Hartford. I'm one of the property owners. I'm not against the thing. The only thing, we wish we'd have got a notice. You know, we found out, Friday or Saturday that you were having this meeting. We haven't heard nothing that I know of before that. Maybe I missed something too, but like I said, we just kind of new to us, and we just wish you'd, as farmers, we gotta send letters out, if we're gonna do something in the area to the 500 feet or whatever it is. Something like that would have been nice to get ahead of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak in opposition to this joint zoning jurisdiction?
Madam Chair, I'd like to respond to Mr. Grace's comment, and this is a very common issue with planning and zoning, is that no matter what the effort is made to communicate, it can always be better. And I can't tell you how often we have even relatives, cousins, brothers, who never told their cousin or their brother they were planning to put in a hog barn, and they come in opposition to their own family member because we all need to talk to each other more, and I do my best to talk.
Which we all appreciate. Okay, so there's no one else who'd like to speak in opposition? Go ahead, come on forward, thank you. If you could also just identify yourself and your address.
My name is Adam Prunty. I live in an area adjacent that will be included in this annexation, and my grandmother also owns some land that will be affected. I just want to applaud Cindy Heiberger for bringing up the fact that it would have been nice to have been informed of this before, have the discussion before this process begins with the city. It would have just been more neighborly to do so, because we don't really have any intentions of developing our land. We use it for farming, and that's part of our business. So that's just my 2 cents. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Anyone else? Okay, well, I'm not sure if there's anybody that wants to speak in rebuttal to that. Both comments were basically about lack of notice. And if not, I'd open it up for discussion.
No, go ahead.
All right.
Commissioner
I just-
Heiberger.
The comprehensive plan is great. I read it, and some of it I've read twice. I think it's really good. I think it's great. You guys are really proactive, and you're headed in the right direction. I don't like that the neighborhood doesn't know. When I pulled this out this morning and looked at the people's names in here, and I know some of them because I live north of Sioux Falls. I told you that. And I just think they need to at least know and be a part of the beginning conversation, because I feel like this vote that I make is binding, that we're at least starting this process. And yes, it is a process, and you're right, Teresa, and there are a lot more steps. But if my land was in there, I'd be really upset that I didn't know ahead of time, even if I ended up being completely in favor of it, and this is a great idea. It still adds another layer of government to a farmer who's already struggling with everything. And maybe it says, you send a postcard out to everybody in that group and say, we'll be having 3 meetings, and this is what we're looking at, and it affects your life. That's the only reason at this point I'm voting against it, because like I said, the comprehensive plan is great. I, grew up a rival of West Central, but I love West Central now. I mean, our Hartford district has done great things. I tell people, go look at Hartford to move to Hartford. It's a good community, and you guys have really been progressive. And so I'm not against what you're doing. I'm just very against the process at this point, so.
Commissioner Benega.
I'm not going to repeat. I think there's a lot of good people that have been involved in this process from the very beginning, and their intent was wonderful. I think that what they want to do is admirable. I just believe at this point we've missed a step, and that step would be to involve the landowners, because of the fact that everything that we seem to get in trouble with or get some negative responses from is when we don't send out enough information ahead of time to be able to make a decision. And since our county equalization and planning and zoning group, I guess, is the administrator of this, I would like to make sure that we cover our bases and get that one step included in this. So I think I would make a motion to defer this, if that's possible. Or do we have to just looking at the state's
Yeah.
attorneys for an
I'm going
opinion?
to see if there's a second, and then we're going to get a
Okay.
ruling of whether that's permissible. Is there
I'll make a motion to defer.
is there a second?
Well, I guess I got my answer. Have to listen to Jeff.
Madam Chair, there's hands up over
Oh,
there.
sorry.
Just a
Commissioner
comment.
Karski.
I'm gonna differ a little bit on, so I don't think it's Scott's responsibility as our planning and zoning to notify the neighbors. I think that it will be incumbent of Hartford to do the work, because I don't think that is our responsibility. They're the ones that want to move it forward, and so I don't want to put more work on Scott either, and I'm not sure that I'm ready to defer it.
So typically in these type of situations, we can run the GIS, the property owner list, and then we would provide that, the most current list of property owners that we have to the city, and we would let them sort of take the lead of how they want to try to notify these people if that's your desire. But you're right, it's not really at this point, it's Hartford's request coming forward to you, not the county's, so.
Commissioner Heiberger?
One more legal question, and that is if we don't defer, but we don't make a motion, it just kind of dies for lack, and then they can bring it back when they're ready without us having to divert and set a date at this time. I think that we can just not make a motion as far as this county side. Sorry, I put you in a bad spot. That just came to my thought.
That's okay, that's okay. Well, Madam Chair, I think that, I think you can certainly defer it, but I think you would probably, then you're left with the decision of whether or not you want to republish another public hearing. And I would think that because of the concern of public input, I think that's the question that would be before you is are you comfortable, republishing again? Because I think that would be the important aspect here.
Scott?
Well, and something came to mind, something came to mind for me is if you were to defer it, typically we defer to a date specific, and I'm not sure how long this might take. I mean, I hate to have to rush the city of Hartford, that we have a public hearing, and how long it's gonna take, and what the appropriate time to, meet with people would be. I know that when we've done public hearings, or big open houses like this, and given the ag community doing it in the middle of harvest, you're also gonna be criticized that, you know, I was trying to get my corn in and I couldn't attend this hearing. So we typically don't like to, so the best time to do these type of big open houses is basically November through April 1st. And then once again in the middle of summer, because crops are, you know, April through June, they're getting their crops in. And so, I mean, we have a very good understanding, at least my office does, about when we hold these meetings and when you get the best participation. So if you are gonna defer it, it has, typically, don't you defer to a date specific?
Yes.
So we need a date specific, and I'm not sure how you would, what date that would be to get everyone on board with a public hearing or a public open house.
Commissioner Benega.
I'm going to withdraw my motion, and I want to clarify when I said that planning and zoning was responsible for this. I was talking about the decision-making process in the annexations, not so much about doing this process. So, but I will withdraw my motion.
Commissioner Karski.
Last week I made the comment that when we give joint jurisdictional powers, that we're really taking away the representation from the people that, if this, doesn't matter if it's Sioux Falls, Hartford, Del Rapids, whatever, they don't elect the city council that may deny their request. And I don't see that this makes having joint jurisdictional boundaries really benefits anybody except for more bureaucracy for people to have to go through the process. And I know I'm getting away from the conversation of deferring, but I'm just want you to know my position on this. You know, when for me to give this positive consideration, I would want to see not just the numbers, but what can Hartford support infrastructure? I mean, we're going several miles out to the east of town. Can you support water, sewer? What is your projected growth areas for the next 10 years? Going beyond 10 years, I have no idea, you know, how I could give representation to you for people that live outside of your, where you have your elections. Can you support services below, to the south of Interstate 90? How far north and east can you go? Can, you know, the geography, can you put sewer lines out there? Do you need lift stations? What would it take for you to service the people that you want to have joint jurisdiction over so that they could see some benefit for what you're proposing? And when I look at this map, we are almost tripling in square acres, miles, footage, whatever, the size of Hartford in what you currently, your boundaries, your city boundaries are to an area, like I said, that's close to triple what it is currently, that you would have some regulation over. If we vote against this now, you guys don't even get a vote. If there's a joint jurisdictional meeting, if it would go forward and somebody wants a proposal and we vote against it and you vote for it, it dies because it has to pass both bodies. I've been in these situations now for over 8 years, and the person I feel most sorry for is the one bringing a proposal forward for some development, or maybe opening a store or whatever, and one likes it and the other one doesn't, and they own land and they can't even do what they want to on the land. I think that while I respect the municipal opinion, as far as, you know, what they would like to see next door to them, it's still in the county, and we have to give equal representation to those people. So I really can't support this. I could support it if I could see where you're looking at growing over the next 10 years and you say we really need to control this area. But just to say 2 miles this way and a mile that way, and I don't know what you're going to be providing these people, it's hard for me to support it.
Commissioner Heiberger.
I have another question about process, because I still didn't find out if we just don't vote on it, where it would go. Because if we deny at this point, can they bring it back in 6 months to a year I think this conversation's been good because I think it's helped you guys know what kind of stuff we need to have and what makes it more plausible because, I mean, this is the first time we've had an opportunity to discuss this. And so it gives them an opportunity, but I don't know which way we go, whether we drop it or we make a motion, because if we deny it, can they bring it back?
I'll defer to the state's attorney on that
Thank you,
issue.
Madam Chair. Well, I think you should take action today. I don't think you should leave it in limbo, because then you're left with, well, when are we gonna bring this back up again? And we haven't announced when the next hearing is. I think that, if you, decide that this isn't right for your consideration and you'd like to have some more input from the community, that I don't think there's anything, that prohibits this from coming back in 30 days or 90 days. I don't think there's any time frame within which they're barred from bringing it back for your consideration.
Commissioner Heiberger.
Sorry, I'm just talking about process again. I just remembered that there was something in a city one where we had a joint city planning and zoning, and if we denied it, they had to go 6 months. Scott, do you know about that? And that's fine, because this is gonna probably take more than 6 months anyway. I just,
What you're referring to, Commissioner Heiberger, is a specific, action on a rezoning request or a conditional use permit. If those are denied, then there is a waiting period.
So that-
But I
it's
think the
different.
state's attorney is correct. There's nothing in the statutes that say that they have to wait if,
okay,
so.
okay, thank you.
Commissioner Barth.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I really understand your arguments, Commissioner Heiberger. At the same time, I guess, being on the Planning Commission, I feel like we've kind of hashed this stuff out a little bit as we encounter other joint jurisdiction all around the county. And I favor us going forward with this at this time. I think that, generally, people are of good faith on these things and are not trying to take away the rights of neighboring property owners. And part of organized growth is to, try to decide where to put the rendering plant compared to the residential area. And I think that will help with this. And when we have conflicts, then it comes to a joint meeting where, we consider both sides of the issue and fight it out. And I think that this has been a long time coming. It's been probably years, and I know of other communities in our county that are seriously considering asking for these same kind of powers. And so I think we should go ahead and act affirmatively today and then work the process to get the exact agreement that we would like.
I'm still waiting for a second to withdraw my motion.
A second to withdraw the motion.
Well, I would just say that, I think that you guys have the benefit and the burden of the fact that we've had some opportunity to see how this process works when the rubber hits the road. And I'm all in favor of organized growth. And I've lived places where they did not have the benefit of people who had foresight and had exercised that organized growth. But at the same time, these are very real property rights that are affected by this. And then there is the troubling issue of the fact that these property owners do not have an opportunity to elect you, the city, but then are subject to giving you basically veto rights with their opportunities to move forward with how they utilize their own private property. And so I haven't completely made up my mind that I would not be in support of this long term, but I am not in support of it without having the landowners had opportunities to come in and be educated about what this process really means, and to have an opportunity to have their voice heard at this point in the juncture. I had similar questions about, what does this mean if we adopt your plan? And does that mean we have to, are we committed to move forward? And what happens if we can't agree on zoning? So I would feel much more comfortable with this process moving forward if we'd had some meetings, some, very specific outreach to those that would be in this proposed joint jurisdiction so that their voices can be heard and we can move forward in the wisest possible manner. With
Madam
that,
Chair,
I
make a
think
motion?
okay.
I make a motion to deny.
Motion and a second. Any other comment?
Madam Chair, do we want the city council to have a comment here, or the mayor of Hartford?
I would certainly be open to, if they have some comments they want to make at this point, they certainly could.
Mayor Menning, Hartford, South Dakota. I appreciate the discussion today because I think it's a really good chance for us to get a feel for where you are on this and for you to get a good feel for where we are on this. And we view this as this is a long-term plan. Obviously, these things go on for a long, long time, and we want to make sure that the steps that go into it are correct and happen the way that are good for us, good for the county, and good for the landowners on all of that. So we weren't advised to take that route before having this meeting. So I just wanted to make sure that that's clear and kind of get on the record that there is no way that the city of Hartford is looking to circumvent letting people know. In fact, the advice that was given to us was really to go through these steps, invite landowners, go through that. I appreciate this discussion though, because I can see where you're coming from, Commissioner Heiberger, and others. I think that that this can be a really healthy thing going forward as long as everybody goes through it and does it the right way. The last thing I'd like to point out is this joint jurisdiction area, we don't look for that to be an encumbrance on those landowners. We want to make sure that whatever happens in that joint jurisdiction, that we don't end up being an encumbrance on them when we grow out to them. So I think it's healthy to have those discussions if they're putting up something major in that area, that we're at least part of that discussion too, because we're going to grow out there. And eventually, rather than them being a problem for us, we're probably going to be a problem for them. So I think having those discussions on the front end is always healthy. So appreciate the discussion today, and we will look at next steps and talk and continue our communication with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else? I prefer to have the comments at this point be with the people that are directly involved. Yeah, go ahead. Yes, Scott. Sorry, I was speaking to someone in the back of the room.
Teresa and my constituents are going, oh God, Scott, what's Scott going to say now? Scott Nelson, Ward 3, Hartford City Council. And since 2012, I was part of the initiation of the joint jurisdiction. Since that time, Mr. Anderson's done a wonderful job informing us on the protocol that takes place, and by no means have this been taken lightly. We've done our due diligence as far as that part of it goes. I want to go back to 2013, and Mr. Prunty and Mr. Grace were probably part of this conversation. A section, I can't point it out for the audience, but it was a quarter section right there, okay? It was owned by Mary Kitweiler, and she wanted to develop that quarter section in essence. It did not necessarily meet our specs. Mr. Prunty, and I don't think, Mike, you came up on that one at all, but it was not done in a what we felt as a city council in an orderly fashion. It didn't meet some of our specs and so on and so forth. So what I'm trying to convey to the county commission today is that we do, as a Hartford City Council, take into consideration our neighbors who are vibrant to our economy in essence. And even though odds are you will probably will turn this down today, I want to make sure that you understand that we would, as Jeremy said, do take into consideration that we are very cognizant of our neighbors, and that in future, no matter what the resolve, I don't think this council will ever use the word I shouldn't say this in essence, but an annexation without a complete quorum of landowners in this area that would benefit this, or would, sign off on this type of jurisdiction. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any other comments from the
What
commission?
is the motion?
The motion was to deny the proposed joint zoning jurisdiction area. Commissioner Karski.
I guess my last comment would be, don't take a no for now as a no forever, because I just would feel more comfortable knowing, having some questions answered. So, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Barth,
No.
Benega,
Yes.
Heiberger,
Yes.
Karski,
Yes.
Bender.
Yes. Motion passes 4-1. So I'd look to Hartford. You could take an action if you want to. I'd leave that up to you. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn the joint meeting of the Minnehaha County Commission and the Hartford.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Hartford, would you like to take similar action? Thank you. All right, so now I'd entertain a motion to reconvene into the Minnehaha County Commission meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. That takes us to the next item that brought a lot of people here today. And I'd have to find it on my agenda after it got all scribbled over. It's a public hearing for proposed real estate exchange for an emergency access easement. Scott Anderson.
Thank you again. Scott Anderson, Planning Director. And this item today before you is, it's basically twofold. First of all, there is a proposed easement agreement, and that easement agreement identifies and addresses two specific easements. And then the second item is a real estate exchange agreement. And this would exchange the use of those two easements. In exchange for those two easements would be 3 parcels, lot 16, 17, and 18, and then a parcel to be platted, which is the old railroad right-of-way, and those parcels are shown in the blue on the map that's on the screen ahead of you. So let me identify or go over a couple things with you quickly, and then I'll be here for answering questions, and then the Arboretum Board is, several people from the Arboretum Board are here, and Vince Jones representing the interested party is here as well. So easement number 1 is currently shown in orange on the screen, and it's the larger existing roadway. This roadway has been in place for many, many years, probably since the early 1900s. So this is just cleaning up that existing roadway. The second easement, which is shown in the yellow, is a new easement. It's approximately 290 feet long by 33 feet wide, and this would extend from the end of that existing roadway to the west, and then eventually and the purpose for this easement would be to allow for emergency ingress and egress to the property to the north, and would allow that property to the north to be developed, and would provide those people living in that new subdivision an emergency way in and out vis-a-vis a breakdown barrier, a knockdown barrier. Should there be an emergency, they could access that breakdown barrier and gain access to get out of their subdivision in the case of an emergency. In exchange for those two easements, we, with this agreement, would be compensated with the gifting of lots 16, 17, and 18, and that small parcel of land, which is the old railroad right-of-way, which has been identified as being part of a future bike trail system for the city of Sioux Falls. So we have had months of discussion on this, and today is a public hearing. It has been advertised for this exchange in accordance with South Dakota Codified Law 654. We have identified the value of the easements. Our appraisal board went out yesterday and provided, as part of the requirements of 654, have identified the value of what those easements are. And today is the day to consider whether we would like to exchange the use of, create the easements, exchange the use of those emergency access easements for lots 16, 17, and 18, and a portion of the old railroad right-of-way. In addition, or furthermore, the acquisition of these properties have been on our radar for a long time. Prior to our joint powers agreement with the City of Sioux Falls and the Arboretum, I had written a grant to try and obtain 16, 17, and 18 through Game Fish and Parks, and the county was awarded that grant, and then subsequently that property was sold to a developer, and they no longer wanted to, the previous owner no longer wanted to sell those to the county. So this has been on our radar to acquire this to enhance that existing park area out there, and it also falls into line with the future land use plan that the park has to acquire those properties. So it all fits in nicely in an overall goal that we would like to see. So I would be glad to answer any questions. I can show you a couple of pictures, and this is the actual survey document showing easement 1, which is the existing roadway, and this is some pictures of the existing roadway and what it looks like. There's the road bed, and this is the turnaround. This is at the very end. There is a private residence that currently uses that roadway. And then this is easement 2, which is the 290-foot long easement, which is a new easement, and this basically runs straight west at the end of this road and runs towards that telephone pole that you can sort of see in the middle of the picture. And this would allow that land to the north, which is to the right, to be developed. You can see there's a little hill there, but the property is to the north of that little knoll hill. And once again, this is sort of a close-up of that area. So I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have. And there are many people here that are keenly interested in what kind of action is going to occur today. So I would be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Scott this time? Thank you. So, is there anyone here that is opposed to this proposal today? If so, it's an opportunity to come and speak.
Still Robert Colby and still in Sioux Falls. Many years ago, I was involved with this particular piece of property. As you look at these 3 lots here, they're basically undevelopable. So they have next to no value. They're a POS, property oversold, or parcel oversold. You could never build on it because it's on rock. You can't put a basement in. You'd have to build slab on grade. You would not be able to put in sewer, water, or any other utility. If you did electric, you'd have to build concrete pyramids to put in the pole because you can't drill down to put in electricity and bring service in. Highway 42 the state will never grant an easement into this to access these pieces of property because of the location. It would be a suicide venture for anybody who wanted to try to live there. You could put a game stand up there and you could use bow and arrow because you'd never be able to use a rifle, and even that would be limited as soon as the city moves out there. So it's basically a useless piece of property. If it were worth anything, Sam Asson would have bought it a long time ago. Now, as opposed to this easement here, the emergency easement, that puts a burden upon the city and/or county, whoever has the eventual ownership of that, because they have to maintain access for people to come off here and go in. Now, most of the parks that we have in the city and other county, there is a time frame when the park is closed. Because of that access, you would not be able to ever close the access coming in here. It's the same problem we had when Rosenboom's had their house over here, maybe it was over here. When they had their, we could not close off the road and we could not have complete control of that park area. We could not control it. We had to leave it open. And if there's an emergency easement here, that has to be maintained, at least as a roadway, and in the wintertime, you'd have to have snow clearance, and you're going to, if you have an access like this, you cannot put a stop point where the people cannot go into the park after a certain time, because it has to be an access. And if that's the case, then you're going to have to either have the sheriff's office or the police department make regular patrols down here, because in the good old days, that was an area where, how would we say, people in offices in Sioux Falls would come out and have picnics inside their car. We'll leave it go at that. So this, you would not have, no one, either the city or the county, whoever has the final jurisdiction of this, would not be able to close this off and have it, park closes at 10 p.m. Because if there's an emergency easement, you still have to maintain that. So if you have questions of what I have said, I would try to answer them, because I remember this is back at least between 10 and 30 years ago. And we wanted to try to get that. We even tried to get the property going up around the corner that was part of the, along the river, and get that from the Iverson family, but they eventually said, well, at that point, they were talking about the monies it was worth. Now, you're enhancing. This is a giving. We've heard a lot about takings on the dealings with the government makes a person's property less valuable. You are enhancing all of this, and you're not getting anything for it. If you want to grant that easement, I would say, yes, you can have an easement there, $10,000 a month, because we, the county and or city, whoever has final jurisdiction, has to come in and have police or sheriff's office go in there regularly, because they have to make sure that no one who does not belong there should be there.
Any questions? Thank you. Is there anyone else here who'd like to speak in opposition to this? You can go ahead and come forward. Give your name and address, please.
Colin Barron, Sioux Falls. And I'm not technically speaking in opposition to this, but I am the only resident that lives down there. And I guess my concern at this point is that the orange part, the access easement that they're indicating for the private residents access and for the emergency access, I was contacted about a year ago by the city, by a gentleman by the name of Albert Schmidt. He was very, very adamant about the fact that we needed to have an easement put in place to guarantee my access to my property, because the existing access, which came across the bridge, was closed due to the condition of the bridge. So over the course of the last couple months, I was contacted by the county saying that they are now the ones spearheading this whole operation, and that they no longer felt that there was the need for the easement. So I'm just trying to get clarification as to whether this orange area is going to give me a permanent legal access to my property, or whether that will be up to interpretation in the future and can be changed. Overall, I would say that I 100% support the overall development of the area. My personal residence, I don't think, is affected by it. My concern is that at what point in time can the developer either change my access or tell me that I no longer have an access? So I'm just trying to get clarification on what my legal rights are. I have been in contact with Scott also in regards to this issue. He has basically indicated to me that my only recourse is to hire an attorney in order to move forward with getting an easement put in place that gives me legal access to my home. And the main reason I bring all this up is because the city of Sioux Falls, Albert Schmidt, came to me and he was very adamant about the fact that my legal access that I currently have is no longer there because the bridge has been closed. So he felt it important that this other legal access be put in place. Scott evidently has a differing opinion on that, and he does not feel it's necessary. So I'm just trying to get legal clarification. Do I have legal access through that exact route that I currently use?
Well, Mr. Behrens, I'd just say that we're not here to act on that today, and then we can't give you legal advice. And I think, you know, I know you've been in contact with our staff about this issue, and we could talk to you separately about that, but that is completely not related to the issue that, I mean, I understand how it's related in your mind, but it's not related to the action we're taking
You're
today.
indicating that the orange access, the one that they're indicating, gives me existing
All
access
we're
to my
acting on
home?
today is emergency access for the grantor, so it doesn't affect you at all today.
Okay. So can we get clarification that the emergency access isn't actually going to touch any of my, or isn't going to use any of my current property?
Well, we can't grant any rights to your private personal property.
No, I mean, the
Oh.
easement is being requested for an emergency access. Will the physical part of that emergency access be on my property?
We cannot grant any access on your property, but Scott has a clarification.
The property's been surveyed. JSA surveyed the property, and the easement is on county property. It's not on his property.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak in opposition to this proposal today? Okay, I don't see anyone else. Is there anyone from the proponents who wants to give any rebuttal to any of the comments that were made? Hi, good morning.
Morning. Vince Jones. I'm an attorney. I represent Coin Bank, who is, as Mr. Anderson pointed out, an interested party. Coin Bank owns Outlot B and Tract 5, which would be the benefited property affected by these easements. So I didn't come here today with any prepared remarks. I would like to respond to a couple of the comments that were made earlier. But before I do that, I just want to thank the parties that have been involved in getting us here today. County staff has been really, really good and diligent. You have very good staff, so I applaud them. Also, the Arboretum board members, they're very passionate about what they've been tasked to do, and they've got a really good park there, and I think that they zealously advocate for that park, and they should be applauded for that as well. It was our goal coming in here today to try to walk across, into this room hand in hand and try to get this done. Obviously, you're never going to have 100% agreement from every single person, but I think we've done a lot of work here to try to get as many people on board as we can, and I think that generally it's my impression that there's largely agreement between the major players here. I've been involved in this project for approximately the last 18 months or so. Maybe it's been 2 years. It's kind of blending together. There's been a lot of evolution in how this project has come together. And I'd also like to point out that the pictures that were shown earlier, they really don't do that justice. The areas that were shown along that road, they're kind of taken in the fall, and it looked like maybe there was some snow melt in there. But that area is really very, very pretty. It's worth noting that the stuff that's already there and the work that the Arboretum has done, it really has created a benefit to everybody in the area. And we're all neighbors here, and we've all had these discussions. So we're here to answer any questions you might have, and we're hoping that we're going to be able to move forward today. Just to respond to some of the comments that were made, it's our position that this property, lots 16, 17, and 18, and the strip that's currently located in Tract 6 is not without value. We think that there's extensive value in those properties. Highway 42 is slated for some redevelopment. We've been informed that the Arrowhead Park, where that's situated in relation to those parcels, there's good possibilities for redevelopment and access to Arrowhead Park underneath Highway 42. The city has obviously desired to have this area for a long period of time, so I'd respectfully disagree that lots 16, 17, and 18 and the strip in track 6 are without value. Also, the easement that's highlighted there, that was contemplated to some degree in the joint cooperative agreement that was entered into between the city and the county back in 2008. So it's not like this is coming up for the first time today. This was thought about before. And this has gone on. There's a long, storied, and complicated history behind this whole area. And I don't pretend to know it all, but I probably know more than most, having been involved for the past few years. And if you have any questions about it, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? One point of clarification. It's my understanding from the discussions on the legal documents that that your client, the grantee, is undertaking responsibility for maintenance of the small access easement, the new part. Is that correct?
That's correct. The small strip there is, so the grantee, which would be Coin Bank and Coin's successors in interest, they're going to be responsible for constructing a road there, which doesn't exist. There is a road along you'll have to forgive me, I'm colorblind. I think Scott said that the long one was orange and the short one was yellow. There's an existing road on the long one, and then there will have to be a little connection made in the yellow area. So the grantee is responsible for construction and maintenance there.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? All right, thank you very much. All right, so I think that leaves it up to the commission.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Barth.
you know, I think the task given the Arboretum Board is to preserve this area for nature purposes. And if we can add some area to the area being preserved, I think it's to all of our benefit. I mean, hopefully in another 100 years, people will still remember East Sioux Falls and visit that area and see the benefit of nature. And so I will support this.
Okay. I think we're done with public comment. Thank you. Any? No, we are done with public comment. Thank you. You'll need to come to the, I've said we're done. The
Madam
commission
Chair.
can ask for legal opinion if they need one. Thank you. Commissioner Heiberger?
I was gonna, I don't see in the memo what the motion would need to be, and I don't know if it's more than one motion. And so I just need a point of clarification for what the motions are.
Go ahead. I'll defer to the state's attorney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, the board would need to, if the board wanted to move forward, you would be adopting a resolution. And so basically, the motion would be to adopt the access easement and the exchange agreement, and to authorize the chair to sign those documents along with a resolution.
Madam Chair, I would make that motion and ask for a second.
I will second that.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I have a question.
Commissioner Karski.
I'm understanding two different things here, so I just want clarification, because we're talking about the emergency access, that yellow section, but all the resolution does specifically refer to the orange section also, and that's granted a permanent easement there too, but the comments I heard is that this is just to the yellow, but this is both, isn't it, Scott? So we are granting the orange area is the permanent easement that the gentleman that lives out there, Mr. Barron.
It's just an emergency access easement to the grantee, which is the current owner of the land to the north, the benefited property. That's all we're doing today. It's
Okay.
detailed in that access easement that we're approving.
Yep, and I was reading that, but that orange is a county, or not, that's a public road, correct?
Madam Chair, Scott needs to come to.
Yeah.
He previously answered in the affirmative to Commissioner Karski's question.
Well, I'm just looking for clarification, because I've heard two different things. That's why I'm asking.
Well, as Vince Jones indicated, there's a complicated history there, and this involves East Sioux Falls, which, you know, is a historic location. So there are many old platted right-of-ways there. This road, the existing roadway, didn't really follow any of those platted right-of-ways, so it's setting the easement and the boundaries of that existing road as an easement.
Okay, so that is.
So that is, and then subsequently, the yellow is the emergency access easement, which is going to tie into that other easement.
Okay. And I thank you to the Society for, we got a book up here last week, and I read it, and I thought it was very interesting and historical, gave a lot of perspective to what's going on, so I really appreciated what the information you gave us there. But I just wanted to clarify, because I was hearing it only is this, but in reality, it does affect both.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And an emergency access only.
Mhm. Yeah.
All right, we had a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? If not, I'd call for a roll call vote.
Benega.
Yes.
Heiberger.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye.
Barth.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. Thank you to everyone who spent a lot of time on this. Thank you very much. So, all right, so we are not yet done with public hearings. Next item is a public hearing to consider the 2019 annual Burn JAG program spending plan for Minnehaha County and the city of Sioux Falls. Joe Bosman.
Morning, Commissioners. Joe Bosman with the Sheriff's Office. This morning, we have scheduled a period of public comment as part of a requirement for a Justice Assistance Grant. We also like to call it the JAG Grant. We've been fortunate to receive this grant for several years in a row now. It is a joint allocation between the Sioux Falls Police Department as well as the Minnehaha County Sheriff's Office. Part of the program requirements is that, like I said, we have this time of public hearing so we can discuss the spending plan if anyone from the public or the commissioners have comments on the spending plan. It is a joint spending plan where we have program requirements we've identified with the Sheriff's Office, and then Sioux Falls Police Department has identified projects that they would like to use their funds for as well. So at this time, I would open it up for comment, if it would be your wish. Anyone else has any comments?
So, are there any questions for Joe?
Joe, I just had one quick question. When I looked at this, I certainly support all of it, but how is the grant split between the city and the county, or is that a negotiated kind of thing?
It's not a negotiated, comes down from the federal government, which is,
Okay.
they are the facilitators of the grant. It is a 65-35 split, with the county receiving the 35% of it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Heiberger.
Mine was just more of a comment, because when I read this weekend, there was not a list of what the products were, and so I was concerned, because I thought, are we doing this another week again? And it's now on Dropbox, as it wasn't before. We have done this in the past, and it's been a good program. I just want to make sure wherever the ball got dropped, that we have a list of what they are.
Yep.
So,
And I apologize for getting that just in there, just a little bit behind the curve there. Again, this is a very beneficial funding source for the law enforcement in this area as a joint partners with the county and the city. It allows us to obtain projects and equipment, stuff that doesn't put a burden onto the normal budgets for either agencies.
Any other questions?
Sure.
Commissioner Barth.
You know, Joe, I sure appreciate you coming forward with this. At the same time, it seems to me we've done this several years, and per our earlier discussion with Hartford, we've never had a citizen come and want to discuss this with us. Are we not putting the word out anywhere? And it's not that I really want to have a whole bunch of people show up and talk about this, but there ought to be somebody every few years that wants to come in. And, you know, they don't all have to be ex-commissioners.
Post note, we do post notice for 2 weeks prior to this.
Right,
this
but how
hearing. It's
come
just-
nobody comes?
I agree.
I might just carry on.
Yes.
I know that I had someone complain that someone was not in jail and had struck their friend with a motor vehicle after another DWI and said, why wasn't he still locked up? I said, you know, nobody wants to build a bigger jail. He said, I do. And I said, come to our meeting and tell us you want a bigger jail. Never showed.
Okay, so we've given Captain Bosman an opportunity to speak. This is a public hearing, and even though the room emptied out after our last one, I will give anyone who is opposed to this the opportunity to speak if they would like to. All right, hearing none. It's my understanding that this is a public hearing that's required by the grant, but that no action is actually needed today. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
All right, so we did our public hearing, and as Commissioner Barth pointed out, nobody came and wanted to talk about your binoculars and your digital cameras. But we are glad you are going to ask for them because we know they are needed. All right, so that takes us to item 13, which is to authorize the chairperson to sign an agreement between the City of Sioux Falls and Minnehaha County for the 2019 Burn Justice Assistance Grant Program Award for Disparate Allocation.
I'd make a motion to authorize the chair to sign this agreement for the 2019 Burn Justice Assistance Grant.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. You have item 14 as well. Let's consider a motion to declare the Sheriff's Office capital assets as surplus for distribution at no cost to the South Dakota DCI and South Dakota Highway Patrol.
So the items on the agenda for this one here as well, the first one is the security equipment for SWAT trailer and surveillance camera. This was something that last fall, if you remember, I was up here talking about an old FEMA trailer that we had used as a command post. You may have seen it at the fairgrounds. It had some older and aging security equipment in it that the trailer was kind of in need of repair. We ended up deciding to surplus the trailer, but the equipment inside was something that maybe we could find a useful life somewhere else. These two items that were still on our capital asset list, we identified as items that were in that trailer that DCI was going to use, and so it's kind of like a house cleaning, updating of our capital asset list for those first two items. Falls in line with the next item is the Mac Pro computer. Going through the capital asset list, trying to identify things that are on there that are not being used anymore, brought our attention to this one. However, this one was purchased with state funding through the Internet Crimes Against Children, or called ICAC, division funds, and they are asking that they would like to have the computer back since they purchased it, and so that one we were requesting to be surplus back to the South Dakota DCI. The last one is our 2008 Lenco Bearcat armored vehicle. We have been very fortunate as a joint asset to receive a newer, brand new armored vehicle with the City of Sioux Falls and Minnehaha County using Homeland Security funds. The 2008 Lenco Bearcat vehicle still has a useful purpose in our area that we feel would be a benefit to our citizens and jurisdictions by giving it to the South Dakota Highway Patrol to be stored here in Sioux Falls, with the understanding that if we need a second piece of armor for a scene of or a critical incident, the Minnehaha County Sheriff's Office and the Sioux Falls Police Department would still have access to that second piece of armor. As you can imagine, it is very beneficial for our officers that are responding to individuals that are possibly armed, especially in a rural setting. If you can imagine a person with a rifle in his house and it's got a quarter-mile driveway, how do we get up there to either get close to ready to rescue somebody or begin those forms of communication with that individual? Armored vehicles have allowed us to accomplish that safely. So this one is one that we are going to remove from our books, but still have able to be used with.
All right, any questions? Not, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that takes us to item 15, which is to authorize the chairperson to sign an agreement for professional services with Short Elliott Hendrickson for preliminary engineering and type, size, and location study for structure 50206-100 DJ Boothie. Right on time.
Morning, Commissioners. DJ Boothie, Highway Superintendent. We are completing our annual bridge inspections this year, and our consultant that's doing the bridge inspections came across a structure that has had some pretty significant deterioration over the last 2 years since its last inspection. And they notified us of it right away. We haven't received a formal report yet. When we do receive that formal report, I do know that we'll be recommending that it's posted for reduced weight loads. In the meantime, we decided that this is on our county highway system. Because of the load reduction and the condition of the structure, we do want to design it and replace it as soon as we can. It's not so bad that it needs to close or anything like that. There's not any safety dangers to the public or anything, but because of the serviceability of it, we do want to make sure that we replace it. We did not have it budgeted for this year, but we do have a lot of money that we can move from one project to another and afford this design fee. And then if you recall, the federal government and through the state government, they're giving us some bridge money. And so if we do need extra funding for this year, we would be asking for a budget supplement through that bridge fund that we received. And it's over $1 million. So this structure is 50-206-100. It's about a half a mile west of 115 in Fwoodrup Township, and it's on County Highway 122. Right now it's a two-span concrete structure, 122 feet long, and what we would like to do is hire SEH engineering firm to do the preliminary engineering or the type, size, and location, which is a preliminary design to find out what the structure will look like once we go to do the design and replacement of the project, hopefully next year. The fee for this work is $44,047.50. Like I said, the schedule, we'd probably be doing this TSNL, have a recommendation for the replacement type, do the design in the late fall, early winter, and hopefully be able to bid it out for construction starting next year. If you have any questions, I can stand by.
Questions for DJ?
Motion to approve?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. I do just have one question. So DJ, is there any particular reason that there was so much deterioration over the last couple of years? Was it weather related or?
The type of bridge construction that this is it's called a double T. It's made from concrete that we've just seen a lot of problems with from the 1970s and 1980s. The way that this is designed, the water and salt water runs down the side of the bridges, and it kind of hangs from the underside of the bridge on the exterior, on the outside of the bridge, and there's just a lot of deterioration where it sits on the abutments on the ends of the bridge. Then it sits in that same kind of salt water mix, and also in a lot of gravel that coming off the road and sits in there, and it just stays wet. And so the combination of just, I think, an era of relatively poor concrete, and then it being subjected to a wet, moist, saltwater mixture for extended periods of time. We've seen a lot of problems with these types of structures.
Okay, thank you. All right, motion and a second. Any further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. So that takes us to item 16, which is to consider a motion to authorize the chairperson to sign purchase agreements for land parcels to acquire right-of-way to rebuild County Highway 146 from South Dakota Highway 11, 7 miles to the Minnesota border. DJ.
Commissioners, our team has been working on this 146 reconstruction project for over a year now, and we've got internal staff and also our engineering consultant basically every single day working with landowners trying to negotiate right-of-way purchases. We try to not come every single meeting with a new purchase agreement, and so they've gotten to the point now where they've successfully negotiated 20 different parcels that all the purchase agreements are included in this packet, and they're requesting your approval to execute the right-of-way purchase. If you would like, I can go through every single one of them with 20 separate ones. I'm hoping that we can just do one approval. They, generally speaking, are to make the right-of-way on County Highway 146 go from less than 50 feet on one side or less than 100 feet in total width out to 100 feet in total width. There are certain areas where we're installing culverts that we do have to acquire a little bit extra in order to have safe side slopes on the shoulders. But in general, that's what these are for.
Commissioner Karski.
DJ, all these were negotiated successfully. We're not forcing anybody into condemnation and sale or anything like that, correct?
That is correct. With these 20 purchases, they were successfully negotiated.
Okay.
We're not finished negotiating all of the right-of-way on this corridor. There's a lot of different parcels on a 7-mile stretch of road. So we do expect that we'll be coming forward with some additional properties that are being successfully negotiated, and there may be some other properties where we have more difficult times.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Motion and a second. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. So the next item is to consider a resolution to approve property tax proposal for record 20031. Carol Muller.
Good morning, Commissioners. Carol Muller, Commission Office. Yes, before you today is a action request where we are asking you to approve a property tax payment proposal for record 020031. This particular property is, I believe, 6 years behind on property taxes, and Auditor Litz has worked with them to create a payment plan where they have offered to pay $614.75 in 8 installments, with the first due on September 10th, 2019. The last payment will be due on April 10th, 2020, and will be greater than $614.75 because there will be additional accrued interest for those back taxes. So we would ask for your approval on this one. You've had several payment plans come forward, and I believe you'll have 2 more next week.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to accept this. I do have a question.
Second.
Motion and a second. Commissioner Barth.
So Carol, when we send out notice that you're behind on your taxes, do we let property owners know that their ownership of said property is in jeopardy?
That would be a question for the Treasurer's Office. Or do you have the information, Bob?
Bob Litz from the Auditor's Office, and we've been working closely with the Treasurer's Office on all these tax deeds this year. And yes, they are afforded many opportunities, not to mention annually they get their tax bills in the mail. So when the first notice comes out that tells them that we're going to start taking action, that's sort of the precursor. It has no real legal effect. It's just a notice. And then after that, we serve everybody that's involved with having a lien or has an interest in the property if we can find them. We serve them with a notice, and then 60 days after that final notice, we send out a letter that says you have 60 days to redeem your property. So there are several steps along the way that folks become aware of what's going on. Caveat to that all is locating everybody sometimes. People pass away, they go pass away in other states. We just can't find much information out about them, and hopefully the publication portion of that will satisfy that requirement.
So if I may.
Mr. Barth.
So Bob, let's say I'm 2 years behind on my taxes. Do I get a notice that says your property will become forfeit without these taxes?
No, you get your standard tax notices that you're delinquent.
Oh, at
The
what
amounts
point
are
do you
accruing
scare
on
me?
that. Pardon me?
At what point do you scare me into paying my taxes?
Well, that would be after 3 years, and then the third Monday in December. That's where we send notice out that the title or the county has a certificate of redemption for those taxes on your property. That's your first notice that the legal process is beginning, and so that would it's just about a total of 4 years.
I just wonder, Madam Chair, if we're giving people enough of understanding of don't ignore this item. This needs to be paid, because it seems like people go for, in this case, 6 years. Bob, is it? And suddenly they're alerted to the hazard. Meanwhile, most of us know right off the bat we have to pay our taxes.
Other comments or questions? Okay, I have a motion and a second. So I take a roll call vote, please.
Heiberger,
Aye.
Karski,
Aye.
Barth,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. So that takes us to the next item, to consider the following actions regarding the disposal of surplus property from Minnehaha County.
I know Carol's name is on that, but I'll take that.
Okay.
Originally was scheduled for it, but nobody, including me, knew if I was going to be back. I hope to be painless and expeditious on this. This involves the annual surplus property auctions.
Minnehaha County is once again participating in with the City of Sioux Falls annual surplus property auction. County departments have identified items they no longer have use for and would like to have declared surplus for disposal or transfer. Combined list of all items was sent out to county departments, so they had an opportunity to first request the transfer of any item for their department's use. After county departments had an opportunity to request items, the commission office sent the list of remaining items to outside nonprofit agencies so they could request items to be donated to them. The items have been divided into 3 exhibits for your consideration and action. Exhibit A contains a request from facilities for the transfer of a John Deere garden tractor and a John Deere Gator vehicle. Facilities is requesting these 2 items to be used as a source of parts and equipment repairs. Exhibit B contains items that were requested as donations to outside agencies. Exhibit C contains items for sale at the surplus auction. In order to authorize the disposal of these items, the following actions are needed, and there's 4 of them. 3 motions and 1 authorization. First motion that we're asking for is the motion to declare property shown in Exhibit A as surplus for transfer from parks to the facilities for use as parts. The second motion would be to declare the property shown on attached Exhibit B as surplus for donation to nonprofit agencies. And the caveat with this is whenever we do this, it requires a unanimous vote of commission to transfer those to nonprofits. The list of property and receiving agency is listed will be listed in the minutes for publication. Third motion would be to declare the property as shown on attached Exhibit C as surplus for the sale at the surplus auction on September 21st, 2019. And the fourth item that we would need to have accomplished would be to authorize the auditor to publish notice of sale on September 21st, 2019.
Any questions? Commissioner? From the commission? Commissioner Heiberger.
I'm full of questions today. So in years past, when we've done this, I noted on the last one for sale, there's a whole lot of extra computers, and there used to be an agency that came in and requested all those computers. Am I remembering that incorrectly? Did they come back and buy them?
I think there's been times that people have taken all those computers, and then there's been other times that we wind up recycling them. Okay. Depends on what goes on out the sale there and a variety of circumstances, but there's nobody come forward this year asking for all those. That said, some of the nonprofits have asked for some of those computers. So.
Any other questions? All right, I take the motions one at a time then. I'd consider a motion to declare property on Exhibit A as surplus to transfer to other county departments.
My motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item is a motion to declare the property on Exhibit B as surplus for donation to nonprofit agencies.
Motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Karski,
Aye.
Barth,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Heiberger,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Next item is a motion to declare property on Exhibit C as surplus for public auction.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And finally, a motion to authorize the auditor to publish the notice of sale on September 21st, 2019.
So move.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. So that takes us to item 19, is to authorize the chairperson to sign a lease agreement between Minnehaha County and the Sioux Empire Fair Association. Carol Muller.
Commission Office. Before you today is a request to sign a lease agreement with the Sioux Empire Fair. You have a management agreement with them, and we want to put the lease agreement, which has happened in the past before, we want to get those dates set as the same thing. So this is a lease arrangement that would match the management agreement dates, which would end in 2023. I will take the blame that I had a typo on 2024 in the cover memo on that. So we contract, the county contracts with the Fair Association for management of the fair and facilities, and this lease allows for the use of the property to fulfill its contractual management for the fair and the activities that go on out there. I would stand by for any questions you may have.
Here, is this basically an extension of our current agreement without any drastic changes?
That-
Defer to Carol?
Yes. Going back in history, the last time there was a lease was in 2012, and it expired in 2014, had not been renewed. So we're just catching up. But it is still separate than the management agreement.
Any other questions? If
Motion
not,
to approve.
Second.
motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. That takes us to item 20, liaison reports. Are there any liaison reports today? Commissioner Karski.
I had an email from Chris Ola, our Director of Equalization, that one of his staff, Josh Marbach, just completed his certification for being a certified assessor, which really is fairly intense, 5 courses within a year and a fairly high pass rate or exam pass requirements. So just a shout out to Josh for completing that. And that gives us 17 certified appraisers in our equalization office. So congratulations to him.
I agree, thank you. Any other liaison reports today? Commissioner Barth.
Fire chiefs had a meeting, and there had been some issues with radio towers that were no longer functioning that caused some dissension, and it's been decided that Metro Communications will continue to pay the insurance on them and repair them.
Great, I heard it was a great meeting, so thank you for attending. Any other liaison? Commissioner Benega.
Just one quick one, that JDC was approved for their operations by the U.S. Marshal Service again, so we have done well with that inspection.
Great. More good news. I love good news. Anything else? All right, that takes us to item 21, new business. Is there any new business? 22, any old business? Feels like we've had a lot of business today, so Commissioner
Chair,
Barth.
I'm going to, on old business, you know, last week we approved a nuisance declaration on that one property. A citizen who had gone by there said it wasn't that bad. And so before we bring in the bulldozers, I'm hoping that we can reconsider it. I am expecting personally to drive by it during this next week, and I think that we gave them a deadline of next week. It would be great if the property owner were to come in and talk about his efforts.
I agree. Anything else? under
Madam
old?
Chair?
Yes. Commissioner Barth.
17 years ago today, I proposed starting our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance, and while it didn't happen that day, it's happened since then, and we use it every week. We're coming up on the anniversary of 9/11.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right, if not, I'd entertain a motion to recess the Minnehaha County Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we will try to get started again about 11 o'clock.